When you feel tired, let God's love carry what you cannot hold anymore. There are moments when your soul whispers, "I can't keep going." You wake up, and it feels like life is asking for more than you have left to give. You've prayed, you've fought, you've held it all together for everyone, but no one sees how heavy it's become. And maybe right now, you're wondering how much longer you can keep pretending to be strong. If that's where you are, this message is for you. Because God never meant for you to carry it alone. His love was always meant to carry you. Take a breath. You don't need to rush past this feeling. The ache you carry deserves to be seen. Sometimes the soul grows tired, not because it's weak, but because it's been strong for far too long. You've carried the silence, the unanswered prayers, the weight of what you couldn't fix. But every tear that fell unnoticed was never unseen by God. He watched you hold your world together with trembling hands, whispering, "Just one more day." And now he's whispering back, "My child, let me hold what you no longer can." This is where healing begins, not in doing more, but in surrendering what's breaking you. The weight of the soul. There comes a point in every soul's journey when the exhaustion isn't just physical, it's spiritual. You wake up feeling heavy, not because your body is weak, but because your heart has carried too much for too long. You go through the motions, smile when expected, work through the pain, speak calmly when your voice trembles inside. But deep down, something feels fractured, almost invisible. A quiet ache that words can't explain. It's the kind of tiredness that no amount of sleep can touch, the kind that comes from holding on when everything inside you is asking to rest. You've told yourself you're fine. You've convinced everyone around you that you can handle it. Yet when the world grows quiet, and there's no one left to be strong for, that's when the truth surfaces. You're tired. Tired of fighting battles you never chose. Tired of praying for doors that never opened. Tired of pretending that your faith is always unshakable. And somewhere in that fatigue, a quiet question forms. Does God still see me here? He does. He always has. You see, the weight you carry doesn't go unnoticed. Every silent prayer whispered in the dark, every tear that fell when you thought no one was watching, heaven heard it all. God doesn't measure strength by how much you can endure. He measures it by how deeply you trust Him when you can't. Yet somewhere along the way, you began to believe that being faithful meant never feeling tired, that surrender meant defeat, that asking for help meant weakness. And so you built walls around your pain, thinking you were protecting your faith, when in truth you were only numbing your soul. But there's something sacred about reaching your limit, because that's where God's love begins to move differently. It doesn't demand that you keep walking. It sits beside you in the dust. It doesn't rush you to recover. It holds you while you breathe. When your strength fades, His begins. When your heart trembles, His hands steady it. There is no shame in being tired. There is only the quiet invitation to rest in a love that never grows weary. Maybe your exhaustion isn't failure. Maybe it's a sign that you've been running without letting grace catch up to you. Maybe God is not asking you to climb higher, but to stop and let Him carry the part of the mountain that was never yours to bear. Because sometimes faith isn't the act of pushing forward. It's the courage to pause, to exhale, to whisper, "Lord, I can't carry this anymore." And in that moment, something holy happens. The burden doesn't vanish, but it shifts. It's as if God takes it into His own hands, saying, "Now let me hold it for a while." You don't need to have it all figured out. You don't need to know how tomorrow will look. The soul finds peace not in certainty, but in surrender. God's love was never meant to be a concept. It's a presence. It walks beside you when you're weary. It listens when you have no words, and it carries what your trembling hands can no longer hold. The weight of your soul was never meant to be carried alone. So if you feel too tired to pray, too tired to believe, too tired to pretend you're okay, just be still. Let His love do what your strength cannot. Let it breathe for you, hold you, restore you. Because the same God who stretched the heavens is close enough to lift the smallest ache in your chest. You are not forgotten, and you are not failing. You are simply being called to rest, not as an escape, but as a sacred return to the arms that have been waiting for you all along. The illusion of strength. We live in a world that glorifies endurance. From the moment we wake, we're taught that being strong means keeping it all together, smiling when it hurts, showing up when we're falling apart, saying, "I'm fine," when we're anything but. We wear our pain like armor, afraid that if anyone sees the cracks, they'll think we're broken. But what if strength was never about pretending you're unshaken? What if true strength is found in the trembling hands that still reach for God when everything inside wants to give up? You've carried yourself through storms that no one will ever know. You've walked into rooms with your heart shattered and still managed to speak with grace. And maybe people look at you and think you have it all under control, but they don't see the nights you stayed awake, whispering prayers into the dark, trying to convince yourself that tomorrow will feel lighter. You've mistaken silence for composure. You've mistaken exhaustion for discipline. You've mistaken survival for strength. But the truth is, survival isn't the same as peace. Strength isn't the absence of pain. It's the presence of faith in the middle of it. The strongest souls aren't the ones who never fall. They're the ones who fall into God's arms again and again, refusing to give up even when everything feels impossible. Yet somehow we've learned to hide that kind of strength. We've been told that vulnerability makes us weak, that asking for help means we've failed. So we build walls. We hide behind busyness. We drown in distractions, pretending we're moving forward when we're really just running from the stillness where God is waiting. But the walls we build to protect our hearts also keep healing from reaching them. There's a moment when the illusion breaks. When you wake up and realize that no amount of self-control or forced positivity can fill the emptiness you feel. You can't carry the illusion forever and it's too heavy. And in that breaking, something sacred happens. God begins to whisper into the cracks, "You don't have to be the strong one anymore." It sounds almost too gentle to believe. You've spent so long performing strength that softness feels dangerous. You've built an identity around resilience, and now God is asking you to rest, to lean, to let go. It feels like losing control, but that's because you never had to control it in the first place. You were never meant to hold everything together. You were meant to trust the one who does. When you stop pretending to be strong, you start experiencing grace, real grace. Not the kind that rewards perfection, but the kind that meets you in the mess and says, "Even here, I love you." Grace doesn't demand that you rise. It lifts you. It doesn't condemn your exhaustion. It cradles it. And in that sacred exchange, you begin to understand that God isn't impressed by your strength. He's moved by your surrender. Every tear that falls is not a failure. It's a prayer in motion. Every moment you admit, "I can't do this alone," is heaven's invitation to step closer. Because true strength isn't about never breaking. It's about letting yourself break in the right hands. So let the illusion fade. Let the masks fall. You don't need to be the unshakable one anymore. God's strength doesn't demand your perfection. It just needs your honesty. And when you finally release the image of who you think you're supposed to be, you make room for who you were always meant to be, whole, held, and free in His love. The divine exchange. There comes a sacred moment when your strength finally runs out, not in defeat, but in invitation. You reach the edge of what your heart can hold, and everything inside you whispers, "I can't anymore." You think that's the end, but in heaven's language it's the beginning, because that's the place where God steps in. The divine exchange between your limits and His endless love. You see, God doesn't rush into your life demanding perfection. He walks softly into your weakness. He doesn't wait for you to be ready. He meets you in the middle of your mess, in the silence between your sighs, in the prayers you can't even finish. It's there, in the trembling pause between exhaustion and surrender, that grace begins to move. When you finally whisper, "God, I can't carry this anymore," something invisible shifts. The burden doesn't disappear, but it no longer belongs to you. It's as if heaven bends low, and the weight you've been holding presses into hands far stronger than yours. You feel the air change, lighter, softer, sacred. Not because the storm is gone, but because you're no longer standing in it alone. We often think surrender is losing, but in God's hands, surrender is the most powerful act of trust. It's choosing to believe that He can handle what you cannot. It's choosing to stop fighting battles that were never meant to be yours. It's allowing love to become the strength that holds you up when your own strength collapses. You don't have to understand how it happens. Grace doesn't always explain itself. Sometimes it's just a quiet knowing that you're safe again. That even though nothing around you has changed, something within you has. The heart that was drowning begins to float. The thoughts that once shouted begin to rest. And you realize that the same God who commands the seas has always known how to calm the waves inside you. The divine exchange isn't about earning rest. It's about accepting it. It's what happens when you stop praying for the strength to carry the burden and start praying for the faith to let it go. Because the truth is, God never asked you to be unbreakable. He asked you to be His. He never promised the absence of weight, only that He would carry it with you. Maybe that's what love really means. Not that life becomes easier, but that you never walk it alone. His love doesn't promise to erase your pain. It promises to redeem it. It doesn't silence the storm. It stands with you in the middle of it, whispering, "Peace, be still." And in that stillness, something miraculous happens. The burden that once felt unbearable begins to transform. What once felt like heaviness now feels like surrender. The tears that once burned now cleanse. And in the quiet of your exhaustion, God's love breathes new life into what you thought was finished. The divine exchange is not dramatic. It's sacredly simple. It's the moment you stop striving and start trusting. It's the gentle shift from control to communion, from "How will I survive this?" to "God, hold me through this." And when you do, heaven carries what your heart can't. So let Him hold the pain you don't understand. Let Him carry the people you can't fix. Let Him heal the parts of you that no one knows are still hurting. Because the love of God isn't just a promise, it's a presence. And right now, that presence is here, reaching for you, whispering, "Rest now. I've got it from here." The silent places. Silence can feel unsettling when you've spent so long trying to be strong. The world teaches you to fill every quiet moment with noise, to scroll, to plan, to rush, to fix. Because silence exposes what you've been avoiding. It brings you face to face with the ache beneath the surface. But it's also in that silence where God begins to speak in ways that words never could. There's a kind of stillness that doesn't mean emptiness. It means presence. The kind of quiet where your heart finally catches its breath and heaven feels just a little closer. You start to realize that God doesn't always shout over the chaos. Sometimes He waits for the noise to fade so you can finally hear Him. Maybe that's why your plans fell apart. Maybe that's why the doors stayed closed. Maybe the silence you feared wasn't punishment. It was preparation. Because God's voice isn't found in the earthquake or the fire. It's found in the whisper. The gentle, loving whisper that reminds you, "You are not alone. I am here." We often think that God's presence should look like power, lightning, miracles, change. But in truth, His most powerful moments often come dressed as peace. Not the kind of peace that removes the storm, but the kind that steadies you inside it. Peace that doesn't demand understanding. It simply is. If you listen closely, Silence becomes sacred ground. It's where God reaches the parts of you that words could never touch. The places too fragile for noise, too deep for explanation. The places that ache quietly behind every smile. He speaks there, not in commands, but in comfort. Not in answers, but in assurance. It's in the silent places where he reminds you that you are still seen, that even when you have nothing left to say, your tears are fluent in heaven's language, that even when you can't feel him, he's nearer than the air around you, that the pause between your prayers isn't distance, it's grace making room for something new to grow. So, when the silence comes, don't run from it. Sit with it. Let it hold you. Let it heal what rushing has broken. You might find that it's not empty at all. It's full of his presence. The stillness that once frightened you will become your sanctuary, because in those quiet moments, God is rebuilding what the noise destroyed, your peace, your faith, your strength. There's beauty in stillness that we often overlook. It's where God gathers all the scattered pieces of your heart and starts to weave them back together. It's where he teaches you that rest isn't wasted time. It's holy time. That silence isn't the absence of God's voice. It's often the way he speaks most clearly. The world will always tell you to keep moving, to do more, to fix it now. But the Spirit whispers, "Be still and know that I am God." Those words are not a command to stop living. They are an invitation to start breathing again. Because when you finally stop fighting the silence, you discover it's not empty. It's full of love. And in that quiet, something begins to change. You start hearing the faint heartbeat of your own soul again, steadying in rhythm with his. You begin to understand that the silence isn't lonely. It's sacred. It's not the end of your story. It's the space where God starts writing the next chapter. When the heart stops fighting, there is a moment when the body goes still, yet the spirit trembles. You feel it, that fragile edge between holding on and letting go. You've spent so long resisting, bracing against every wave, convincing yourself that if you just stay strong enough, everything will make sense again. But the tide keeps rising, and your arms grow weak. You realize you can't keep swimming against what was meant to carry you. And in that realization, something inside you softens. When the heart stops fighting, it isn't defeat, it's surrender. The kind of surrender that doesn't shout or collapse in shame, but exhales for the first time in years. It's the whisper, "God, I don't know how to fix this, but I trust you." And that whisper becomes the doorway to peace. Tears may come. Let them. They aren't signs of failure. They're the language of release. Every tear tells heaven, "I'm done pretending I'm in control." Every sob becomes a small baptism of the soul. You don't have to apologize for breaking down. God has always done his best work with broken things. In that quiet unraveling, you start to feel his presence differently. Not as a voice commanding you to rise, but as warmth wrapping gently around the places that hurt. He doesn't rush you. He doesn't demand you stand. He just stays. You sense him in the air, steady, patient, unafraid of your weakness. You realize he never needed your perfection. He longed for your honesty. As the heart releases its grip, the world doesn't instantly change. But your perspective does. The same storm still swirls around you, yet it no longer defines you. The pain that once felt unbearable becomes strangely bearable, because you're no longer carrying it alone. You start to understand that surrender isn't about losing the fight. It's about laying the fight at the feet of the one who already won. Maybe this is how healing begins. Not with victory, but with vulnerability. Not by running faster, but by resting deeper. When you stop fighting, you make room for grace to do what strength never could. Grace doesn't rebuild you overnight. It rebuilds you quietly, piece by piece, heartbeat by heartbeat, until peace feels like home again. And when you finally look up, eyes swollen, voice trembling, you'll realize that the ground beneath you hasn't disappeared. It's been held steady by the same hands that now hold your heart. The war inside goes silent, not because you've conquered it, but because love has. So if you're standing in that place where you can't fight anymore, don't fear it. This is holy ground. This is the sacred pause between your effort and his miracle. Let the waves come. They can't drown what's already in God's hands. Let the tears fall. They're watering the soil of your renewal. Because when the heart finally stops fighting, heaven starts moving. And in that stillness, you'll hear it. The softest, truest sound of all. God's heartbeat, steady against your own, whispering, "Rest now. You are safe." To the beauty of surrender. There's something breathtaking about the moment you stop fighting what was never yours to control. It's quiet, unremarkable to the world, yet heaven celebrates it. Because when you finally unclench your hands, when you whisper, "God, I trust you even here," that's when divine peace begins to flow in. It doesn't rush in with thunder or fireworks. It comes softly, like light seeping through cracks you once called weakness. Surrender has a beauty the world will never understand. It isn't about giving up, it's about giving in. To love, to rest, to grace. It's the moment you stop trying to hold yourself together and let God's hands do it instead. You begin to realize that all this time, He wasn't asking for your perfection. He was waiting for your permission. Permission to carry, to heal, to guide. And when you finally give it, something inside you shifts. The heaviness you've known for so long starts to feel lighter, not because the burden has disappeared, but because it's no longer anchored in fear. Your soul begins to breathe again. Your body feels it, shoulders lowering, breath deepening, heartbeat steadying. You sense that you are no longer your own savior, and for the first time in forever, that truth feels like freedom. The beauty of surrender is that it doesn't erase pain, it transforms it. What once felt like an ending begins to reveal itself as a beginning. The wound that once defined you becomes the doorway where light enters. You start to see how even the broken pieces of your story were being gathered by divine hands all along. Nothing was wasted. Every delay, every heartbreak, every unanswered prayer, all of it was being shaped into something sacred. You start to notice God's presence in small things again. The stillness of morning light, the sound of rain, the way peace hums quietly beneath the noise of the world. You understand now that His love was never loud. It was patient, never distant, always near. He waded through your storms not to rescue you from the sea, but to teach you how to rest upon His waves. And as you rest there in the vastness of His love, you begin to understand something profound. Surrender isn't weakness, it's worship. It's the most honest kind of prayer a soul can offer, because when you lay your burdens down, you're not just releasing pain, you're declaring trust. You're saying, "I believe you're good, even when I don't understand." The beauty of surrender is that it frees you from the need to know what comes next. You no longer have to chase answers, fix outcomes, or predict the future. You start to live with open hands, not grasping, just receiving. And in that openness, God fills you with something no control could ever give: peace. Not the fragile kind that depends on circumstances, but the eternal kind that comes from knowing who holds you. So rest here, in this holy quiet. You don't need to perform, to explain, to strive. The world may not notice this surrender, but heaven does. This is where healing begins, in the softness of trust, in the stillness of faith, in the arms of the one who calls you His. Because the most beautiful thing about surrender is this: you finally realize you were never falling apart. You were falling into grace. The restoration. After surrender comes stillness, and in that stillness, something begins to grow. It's quiet, subtle, almost invisible at first. But deep inside, where despair once echoed, peace begins to hum like a soft, sacred song. You start to feel it before you understand it. a slow warmth returning to places that once felt frozen. This is what restoration feels like, not sudden joy, but steady grace. God doesn't rebuild you in haste. He restores you like an artist repairing a masterpiece, patiently, layer by layer, brushstroke by brushstroke. He doesn't erase your scars. He turns them into stories of survival, proof that even brokenness can bloom again. What once felt like the end starts to reveal itself as renewal, a kind of beauty that only exists after being undone. You begin to notice small miracles, laughter returning in moments where silence used to sit, hope peeking through like sunlight between clouds. The same heart that once felt hollow now feels held. It's not that everything outside you has changed. It's that something inside finally has. Your soul, once heavy with exhaustion, now moves with quiet strength. Not the kind that shouts, but the kind that endures. Restoration doesn't demand that you forget what happened. It invites you to see it differently. You begin to understand that God was never late. He was simply healing you at the pace your heart could bear. Every delay, every pause, every unanswered prayer was part of this gentle rebuilding, teaching you how to depend, how to breathe, how to trust again. You see, healing is not just about relief. It's about relationship. God doesn't want to simply remove your pain. He wants to walk with you through it. That's what restoration really is. The slow return of closeness with the one who never left. You begin to pray differently, not asking for escape, but for endurance. Not asking for control, but for communion. Your prayers become less about fixing and more about feeling His presence. And it's in those quiet, ordinary moments, sipping coffee by the window, walking beneath a dim sky, sitting alone but not lonely, that you sense it. Peace. Not the kind that comes from solved problems, but from a settled heart. You no longer crave constant answers because you found something better. Assurance. The kind that whispers, "Even if everything changes, I am still held." Slowly, your heart learns the rhythm of restoration. Inhale grace, exhale fear. Inhale trust, exhale control. You stop rushing your healing. You stop demanding closure. You start letting God write at His own pace. Because now you understand that every sacred story takes time, and yours is still being written. There will still be moments of sadness, flashes of doubt, echoes of the old pain. But now they don't define you. They remind you of how far you've come, from striving to surrender, from breaking to being rebuilt. You don't carry the same weight anymore. You walk lighter. Not because the road is easier, but because you know who walks beside you. This is restoration, not a return to who you were, but the unveiling of who you're becoming. A soul made softer, deeper, stronger through grace. A heart no longer afraid to rest. A life rebuilt on the quiet certainty that God can make all things new, even you. The reminder, you were never alone. Sometimes healing doesn't come as a revelation but as a realization. The quiet awareness that through every valley, through every sleepless night, you were never walking by yourself. You look back and start to see it. Not with your eyes, but with your soul. The moments you thought were silence were actually God's whispers. The moments you thought were abandonment were mercy, guiding you toward something deeper. You remember the nights when the tears wouldn't stop and you whispered into the dark, "Are you even here?" He was, every single time. Not watching from a distance, but sitting beside you, holding your shaking hands in His invisible ones. The air you breathed when you thought you couldn't go on, that was Him too. The strength you found in the morning when you thought you had none left, that was His love keeping you upright. We often imagine God's love as something that appears only in miracles or victories. But the truth is far softer, far more constant. It hides in the smallest mercies, in the friend who called at the right moment, in the sunrise that reached your window just when you needed light, in the sudden peace that made no sense at all. These were not coincidences. They were reminders. Heaven's way of saying, I never left. You were never abandoned in the silence. You were being held in a different way, not rescued, but carried. God's presence is not always loud or visible. Sometimes it's the very breath that keeps you going. When you look back, you'll realize that every step you took through the dark was guided by a hand you couldn't see but always felt. The beauty of this reminder is that it doesn't erase the pain. It redeems it. You begin to understand that the valley you feared was also sacred ground, because it's where you learn to depend, to trust, to listen. Every unanswered prayer, every detour, every moment you thought was wasted. All of it was part of God's way of keeping you close. So don't despise the slow path. Don't mourn the waiting. Every season of stillness has purpose, and every silence holds a promise. You were never meant to walk in constant certainty. You were meant to walk in constant companionship. His love has been the thread running through it all, quiet, but unbreakable. And maybe this is the real miracle. Not that you escaped the storm, but that you made it through still believing, still breathing, still becoming. You didn't survive on your own strength. You survived on His. You are standing here now not because you were fearless, but because you were carried. So let this truth settle deep within you. You have never been alone, and you never will be. The same God who walked with you through the night walks with you still. The same hands that lifted you from the ashes will keep you steady on your way forward. And the love that held you when you were too tired to stand will continue to carry what you cannot hold. Because that is who He is, the God who stays. The quiet strength behind every heartbeat, the unseen presence in every tear. The everlasting arms beneath every fall. You were never abandoned, never forgotten, never unloved. You were always held, and you still are. The quiet strength. Within strength no longer feels like something you chase. It begins to rise from a quieter place. Not the kind of strength that makes noise or demands to be seen, but the kind that breathes slowly, softly, beneath your ribs. The kind that doesn't roar. It remains. You wake one morning and realize that what used to break you no longer does. Not because life got easier, but because grace began to take root inside you. It's strange how strength can change its shape. Once, it looked like endurance, pushing forward no matter the cost. Now it feels more like peace, standing still and trusting that God will move when it's time. The same storms still pass through, but they no longer carry the same power. You can feel the wind, but you no longer collapse under it. You've become anchored, not in certainty, but in love. And maybe that's what quiet strength really is. Not the absence of weakness, but the presence of faith. Faith that whispers, even if I don't understand, I am still held. Faith that doesn't need to prove anything to the world because it's grounded in something eternal. You start to see that the power sustaining you isn't your own willpower. It's the breath of God moving through your wounds, transforming them into wisdom. Every day, that quiet strength grows a little more. You stop measuring your worth by how much you can carry, and start recognizing the miracle of simply standing. You stop needing to be understood and begin to rest in being known. There's a new rhythm in your life, slower, gentler, but unshakably steady. You speak less, but everything you say carries more peace. You do less, but everything you do feels rooted in purpose. The quiet strength within doesn't mean life becomes perfect. It means you've finally learned where to place your pain. You no longer hold it like a weapon or wear it like a badge. You hand it over again and again every morning if you have to. You begin to live in this divine exchange, where every fear surrendered becomes space for grace and every wound becomes an opening for light. And something else happens. Your compassion deepens. Because now you recognize pain when you see it in others. You can spot it in the eyes of someone pretending to be fine. You understand the tremble in their voice, the pause in their smile. You know what it's like to be tired, and because of that, you love softer. You don't rush people anymore. You listen with patience. You forgive quicker. That's what happens when God strengthens you from the inside out. You stop living in defense and start living in love. The world might not notice this transformation. There are no fireworks when peace returns, no applause when you start breathing easier, but heaven notices. Heaven celebrates every quiet victory. Every time you choose faith over fear, gentleness over reaction, stillness over control. That's what restoration looks like in motion. Not dramatic change, but the steady pulse of grace renewing your spirit day by day. You begin to see your reflection differently now. Not as the person who barely survived, but as someone being reborn through mercy. You carry yourself with a calm dignity, not because you've conquered life, but because you've finally learned who carries you. That's the paradox of grace. The more you depend on God, the stronger you become. And this strength is unshakable because it's not rooted in you, it's rooted in Him. You no longer wake with dread for what the day will bring. You wake with quiet confidence that whatever comes, God will meet you there. You walk slower, but surer. You speak softer, but with conviction. The storms may come, but now you know. Peace isn't the absence of them, it's the presence of God within them. There will still be moments that test this peace. Sudden grief, unexpected loss, old wounds that resurface when you least expect it. But you'll handle them differently now. Instead of panicking, you'll pause. Instead of running, you'll breathe. You'll remember that you are not who you used to be. You are being carried, shaped, and sustained by a love that doesn't waver. And slowly, this quiet strength becomes the foundation of who you are. You stop asking, "Will I make it?" and start saying that God is with me. That simple truth becomes your anchor. It steadies your mind, settles your heart, and reminds you that no matter what comes, light or darkness, joy or pain, you already have what you need to endure it. His love alive and strong inside you. Because real strength was never about standing tall, it was about standing with Him. Walking in grace. There's a moment after the storm when the air feels different. Softer, cleaner, alive. The world hasn't changed, but something in you has. You move through the same streets, see the same faces, do the same things, yet everything feels strangely lighter. You've stopped dragging the weight of yesterday into today. You've stopped walking like someone barely surviving, and started walking like someone held. This is what it means to walk in grace. Not a perfect stride, but a peaceful one. You no longer hurry through life trying to fix, to prove, to control. You start noticing things again. The warmth of sunlight across your skin, the sound of wind brushing through trees, the smile of a stranger that seems to appear exactly when you need it. The world hasn't become easier. Your heart has become quieter. You begin to see how every small detail carries a trace of divine tenderness. You used to call them coincidences. Now you call them reminders. Grace doesn't erase your past, and it redeems it. It takes the broken road you walked and turns it into a path of wisdom. You start to thank God not only for what went right, but for what didn't. For the closed doors that saved you, for the delays that protected you, for the endings that were really beginnings in disguise. You begin to trust that even when you don't understand His plan, you can still rest in His presence. Walking in grace feels like exhaling for the first time in years. You stop measuring your worth by your productivity. You stop apologizing for being human. You stop fearing that everything will fall apart if you stop controlling it. You've learned the sacred rhythm of surrender. And now you live in sync with it. You don't need to chase blessings. They meet you where you are because your heart finally has space to receive them. The people around you start to notice something different even if they can't name it. There's a calmness in your tone, a peace in your eyes. You speak slower, you listen longer. You've stopped reacting to every disturbance because your peace is no longer negotiable. It isn't built on circumstances, it's built on Christ within you. You realize that nothing outside of you can take what God has restored inside of you. There will still be moments when fear knocks at the door, when worry creeps in, when memories whisper their old lies. But now, grace answers first. You no longer fight to silence the noise. You invite peace to speak louder. You know where to return when the world feels heavy again, to that still place within, where God's love hums quietly like a heartbeat that never stops. Walking in grace also changes the way you love. You stop trying to fix people. You start holding space for them. You understand that everyone carries a weight you can't see, and that sometimes the most powerful thing you can offer is presence, not advice. You forgive easier, not because they deserve it, but because you refuse to carry bitterness anymore. Grace has taught you that letting go is also a form of freedom. And when life surprises you, as it always does, you no longer crumble at the unknown. You've learned to trust the one who knows. You take each day as it comes, whispering quiet prayers like, "Guide me, Lord, and I'll go wherever you lead." And somehow, even when the path isn't clear, you don't panic. Because grace doesn't need a map. It just needs faith. The journey ahead will still hold its share of valleys and mountains, but now you walk differently. Your steps may be slow, but they are sure. Your faith may be quiet, but it is deep. You carry no fear of falling, because you know who walks beside you. Grace isn't a destination you reach, it's the way you travel. And as you walk, you start realizing that peace isn't something you visit. It's something you live in. Walking in grace means living with open hands, ready to release, ready to receive, ready to trust. It's knowing that even if tomorrow breaks, God's love will still be there to rebuild it. It's the freedom of not needing to hold everything together because you finally understand you are being held together by love itself. And that is enough. The new dawn. There comes a morning that feels different from the rest. You can't explain why. It just does. The light seems softer, almost intentional, as if heaven itself wanted to remind you that you made it through the night. The air carries a quiet kind of hope, and for the first time in a long while, you breathe without the weight that used to press against your chest. This is what a new dawn feels like. Not loud, not grand, but tender. A whisper from God saying, "See, you're still here, and so am I." You walk to the window, and the world looks familiar, yet somehow new. The trees stand the same way they did yesterday, but now their branches seem to stretch in praise. The morning light touches everything gently, the roof lines, the roads, the small things that used to go unnoticed. You realize how much beauty had been waiting for you, quietly, beneath the noise of survival. Maybe that's what grace does. It doesn't change the world around you first. It changes how you see it. The new dawn doesn't erase the past. It simply stops letting it define you. The memories that once felt sharp now feel distant, like echoes of a language you no longer speak. You remember the ache, but it no longer burns. You remember the darkness, but it no longer scares you. You've walked through the night and discovered that light was never gone, only hidden. God was there all along, even when you couldn't see him. You start moving through your morning slower now. There's no rush, no need to prove anything. You pour your coffee, open the window, and let the sunlight find your face. And in that small, ordinary moment, something inside you says, "Thank you." Not because everything is perfect, but because you've learned to see perfection even in imperfection. Gratitude begins to replace anxiety. Peace begins to replace striving. You begin to live like someone who knows that every sunrise is a miracle, a chance to begin again. The new dawn isn't just about what's in front of you, it's about what's behind you too. It's the holy realization that even your pain served a purpose. Every loss, every delay, every unanswered prayer, none of it was wasted. You start to see how even the breaking was building you. You needed the darkness to recognize the light. You needed the silence to learn how to listen. You needed the waiting to understand that God's timing isn't late. It's perfect. Now you carry a calmness that doesn't come from knowing what's ahead, but from trusting the one who does. You no longer need to control the outcome because you've learned to rest in his authorship. You don't need to rush to the next chapter because you've discovered the holiness of the present one. The sunrise becomes a symbol, not of time passing, but of grace renewing. And as the light stretches across the sky, you realize something else, this peace, this warmth, this breath. It was always available. It just needed space. Space that was once filled with worry, now filled with worship. Space that was once crowded with fear, now open to faith. This is the quiet miracle of renewal. It doesn't arrive with thunder, it arrives with light. You find yourself smiling at nothing in particular, and maybe that's the truest sign of healing, when joy returns without needing a reason. You no longer search for what's missing, you savor what's here. You no longer ask why things happened the way they did. You rest in the knowing that they led you here to this peace, to this morning, to this God who never left. The dawn outside mirrors the dawn within you. You've been remade, not by avoidance of pain, but by walking through it hand in hand with love. And as the day unfolds, you whisper one last prayer, not of desperation, but of gratitude. Thank you for not letting go even when I did. Because that's what the new dawn teaches, that every ending was really a preparation for light. That grace doesn't just restore, it resurrects. And that the same God who painted the sky with color is painting something new inside of you. A heart that knows peace, a spirit that knows hope, and a soul that has finally learned how to begin again. Living lightly, there comes a point when you stop waiting for life to become easier and start realizing that peace was never about the weight of your circumstances. It was about how lightly you've learned to carry them. You begin to move through your days differently. Not because everything is fixed, but because you are. The ache that once defined you now hums quietly beneath gratitude. The memories that once held you hostage now rest like pages already read. You wake up not to survive another day, but to live it. Slowly, gently, fully. Living lightly doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop clinging. You stop gripping so tightly to what was, or to what might be, and begin to trust the rhythm of grace that carries you forward. You walk with open hands, not afraid to lose because you've learned that everything you truly need cannot be taken from you. Love, peace, presence. These are the treasures that remain, no matter the storm. There was a time when you tried to control every outcome, shape every detail, protect every piece of your heart. But now, control feels unnecessary, even exhausting. You've traded it for something softer. Surrender. You've stopped needing to understand and started allowing life to unfold under God's timing. You've learned that His plans are not just higher, they are kinder. And because of that, you breathe easier. You sleep deeper. You laugh again. People may not understand this peace. They might look at your calm and mistake it for indifference. But you know better. You've been through the fire and found stillness in the flames. You've been broken and rebuilt by unseen hands. You don't need to explain your quiet anymore. It is sacred. It is your testimony. It's the sound of a soul that has seen enough chaos to know that peace is holy. Living lightly also means loving freely. You give more now, not because you have everything, but because you've learned that love multiplies when shared. You forgive because holding on costs too much. You listen because every story matters. You smile because joy no longer feels conditional. It feels inevitable. You're not the same person you were when this journey began. The pain changed you, yes. But grace transformed you, and transformation is lighter than pain. You start noticing how beauty finds you again in simple things. Sunlight flickering through trees, laughter echoing across a quiet room, the smell of rain before it falls. These are no longer background details. They are love notes written by God. Each one whispers, "See, I'm still here, and so are you." You walk slower now because you no longer rush through what's sacred. You've learned that peace isn't a destination. It's a way of moving through the world. There will still be storms. There will still be nights when you question, days when you stumble, moments when the old weight tries to settle on your shoulders again. But now, you know how to let it pass. You've learned the art of returning to peace, to prayer, to stillness, to the truth that carried you through before. You know where to rest when the world grows heavy, in the arms that never let go. Living lightly doesn't mean ignoring reality. It means living with faith so rooted that reality no longer controls you. You can face uncertainty without fear, loss without despair, change without resistance. You've discovered the secret. You don't need to hold everything together, because love already is. The same love that met you in exhaustion now walks beside you in calm, steady, patient, eternal. And as you move forward, something extraordinary happens. The weight that once crushed you becomes your testimony. You start to help others carry what you once couldn't. You speak gently into their storms, not with answers, but with empathy, because you've been there. You've lived the ache, tasted the silence, touched the miracle of being held. You've seen what grace can do when all seems lost. And now, your very presence becomes a quiet reminder that healing is possible. So you keep walking, not in haste, not in fear, but in freedom. Each step a prayer, each breath a song of gratitude. The world hasn't changed much, but you have. You no longer move through life waiting for peace. You bring it with you. Wherever you go, it follows. Because you've learned the truth that changes everything. The love of God doesn't just carry you, it becomes you. And in that, you have found the lightest way to live. The promise remains. Even after peace returns, after the light has filled every corner of your heart, there are days when the wind still shifts and the sky grows dim again. Life has its seasons, calm ones, heavy ones, uncertain ones. Yet now you no longer see them as punishment or proof that you've failed. You see them for what they are, reminders that even when everything changes, God's love does not. The promise remains. You'll walk through new days, some bright, some quiet, some carrying echoes of old pain. But the difference is this. Now you know what holds you. You've tasted the kind of peace that doesn't fade with circumstance. You've seen what grace can build from ashes. And once you've been touched by that love, nothing in this world can convince you it's gone. There will be mornings when you wake up with questions again, moments when worry knocks at your chest. But even then, beneath the noise, you'll feel it. That steady rhythm of assurance, the same quiet voice that once called you out of the storm whispering again, "I'm still here." That's the thing about divine love. It doesn't visit. It dwells. It doesn't flicker. It endures. You begin to see that faith isn't about never doubting. It's about remembering. Remembering that light always returns. Remembering that healing never truly ends. It deepens. Remembering that every time you break open and more grace finds its way in. Sometimes you'll pause midday, maybe while driving or folding laundry or walking down a crowded street, and feel it wash over you again, that same warmth that carried you when you couldn't move. You'll realize that God's love doesn't just appear in the holy moments. It breathes through the ordinary ones. The divine is no longer distant. It's woven into every breath you take. And when life surprises you again, as it always will, you'll meet it differently. Not with fear, but with quiet faith. You'll stand where you once fell, not because you're stronger, but because you've learned where your strength comes from. You'll face the unknown not as a threat, but as another opportunity to witness how faithful love truly is. This is what the promise means, that no matter where you go, what you lose, or how tired you become, you will never walk alone again. The same God who found you in exhaustion will meet you in joy. The same arms that carried you through darkness will celebrate you in light. His love doesn't end at restoration. It continues into every chapter that follows. So you walk forward, slowly, softly, gratefully. You no longer rush toward the future because you know the future is already held. You no longer fear the unknown because you've met the one who knows. You live lighter, love deeper, and trust easier because the weight that once crushed you has turned into wisdom. And in your quiet moments, when you look back at everything you've survived, you'll whisper to yourself, almost in awe, I thought I was alone, but I never was. The promise remains. It always has. It always will. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Matthew 11:28. You've carried the weight long enough. Now let grace carry you. You are not failing because you feel tired. You are being renewed in love. Every breath you take is proof that God's arms have never let you go. Rest in that truth. Let His love hold what you can't, and walk in peace, for you were never meant to carry it all alone.